So you guys watched the day a good man stops giving everything away is the day his entire life changes, yeah? I'm going to expand on that a little bit more for you guys. I'm not talking about becoming cold or selfish. I'm talking about the moment that he finally understands that the one person he has abandoned the longest is himself. And that's not fair. Every man has a breaking point. Every man has that moment where something inside of him has to wake up, not out of anger, but out of truth. Because for years, most men built their entire identity around being needed, being the provider, being the rock, being the one who absorbs all of the chaos so everybody else can breathe and relax. Again, not fair. I've watched it more times than I can count. I've seen it with my clients, in my family, with men in my own life, and I've saw it firsthand with my husband long before we ever built anything together. A good man will carry everything alone and carry everyone else with him, his kids, his partner, his parents, his job, his responsibilities, and he'll do it quietly. He won't complain. He won't ask for praise. He won't ask for help. He will just keep giving and keep providing and keep leading. And that's exactly why he breaks. Because you can only pour from an empty cup for so long before life forces you to face the emptiness. For some men, the wake-up call comes through betrayal. For others, it's divorce, financial collapse, a health scare, a moment where everything they thought they were standing on disappears. For some men, that wake-up call comes through as betrayal. For others, it's divorce. Some is a financial hardship, a health scare, a moment where everything they thought they were standing on disappears. I've talked to many clients on Zoom calls crying because they've lost everything except their own heartbeat. And the thing that hits them the hardest isn't the loss of themselves. It's the realization that they never invested into themselves this entire time. That's when the question changes. It's no longer, what do I need to do for everyone else? It becomes, what do I need to do for me now? And that is the moment when a man's life shifts from survival into leadership. He starts investing in his health instead of waiting around until he's falling apart. He starts building discipline instead of building excuses. He starts choosing a mission, not just a paycheck. And he starts consuming better information, not the noise that numbs him. His priorities change. His posture changes. His energy changes. Everything about him changes because he is waking up. He finally becomes a man who understands that if his happiness depends on anybody else, he's fragile. If that woman leaves, if that job collapses, if those people stop needing him, his entire identity vanishes. That's why most men are exhausted, not because they're weak, but because they've built their lives on dependency instead of identity. I watched this with my husband when we first met. He never chased validation. He never lived for approval. He had a mission, a purpose, and was extremely grounded in himself as a man. But it took a lot of hardships for him to get there. The way that he lived forced me to level up, not because he told me to, but because his presence demanded it. Men don't even realize how powerful they become when they finally choose themselves. Their entire ecosystem shifts for the better. And that's why a man focusing on his goals is not pulling away. It's not selfish or rude. It's not distance. That is his personal development, and he needs this time desperately. That's a man pulling himself out of the version of himself that he built from fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of disappointing everybody, fear of losing people if he stopped overgiving. Again, not fair. But a man who chooses himself does not lose people ever. He loses the wrong people and attracts the right ones. A man like that does not stay in a relationship because he's afraid of being alone. He stays because he chooses to be there. There's a difference between a man who needs a woman and a man who chooses one. One comes from insecurity, the other comes from identity. And when a man starts creating his own peace, his own discipline, his own self-worth, the love he brings becomes steady, intentional, and extremely rooted. Not because he fears losing someone, but because he finally knows exactly who he is without them. I've had men in my program tell me, Lauren, I've been married 20 years and this is the first time I've ever done something for me. And it honestly breaks my heart a little bit, but also makes me proud because they're finally waking up and reclaiming their own power. The ripple effect is insane. They parent better, they lead better, they communicate better, they show up differently in their marriage, not out of obligation, but because of their identity that they are building. When a man knows his worth, he becomes dangerous and the best possible way. Not reckless, rooted in himself. Not reactive, intentional. Not desperate, disciplined. So if you're a man listening to this, hear me clearly. The world changes the day you change. Not when she changes, not when your parents change, not when your circumstances change. The day you stop giving everything away and